right, we are back with another episode of the 21 AVA series. I'm joined today by Caleb Foster. How are we doing today, Caleb?
Great, guys. How you doing? It's Stace Washington Wine Month.
Absolutely, absolutely. Where are we going today, Caleb?
Red Mountain. We're gonna go to the tippy top. Tippy top of Red Mountain. When you look at the mountain, there's this cool guy playing guitar up there. See this little fox? He's awesome. And it's up on this really special spot. We're going back here, dropping back in time to 2022. Red Mountain's a hot spot, and this is a cool vintage.
Absolutely. So when he's talking tip top of Red Mountain, we are talking about Weatherine Vineyard. And this is really a vineyard and an area that deserves its own episode. So that's kind of what we're doing today, is really focusing on Weatherine Vineyard here. It's a really special spot. It's only about 40 acres planted. It's broken up into many, many sub blocks. It is just a super cool place. It's above the Missoula floodline. Most of Red Mountain is under the Missoula floodline, but this is at the very top and it crests over the top. So kind of what the focus of at Weatherite Vineyard is going to be: soil, slope, precipitation, wind, and temperature. So they're really checking all their boxes here with what they're doing. Let's get some wine
Yeah.
in the glass. So we're drinking today. This
Man.
is called Edge of the Wild Syrah. This is
Yeah.
a really cool Syrah. This is produced by Ryan and Rebecca Johnson of Mountain Art Wines. Ryan is the viticulturalist up there at Weathereye, and he's doing some stuff that no one else in Washington is doing. I mean, this is really a
Woo.
spare no
Woo.
expense. Yeah, it's got some aromatics.
Whoa. Oh, there's a lot going on in there.
Absolutely. Ryan is really pushing the edge of what you can do with Washington plantings. He's taking old world techniques. He's taking techniques of bush training, of stake training as well, and then high density as well. Some of these blocks are planted to 300 acres or 300 vines per acre. Other ones are as dense as 4,000 vines per acre. So
That's a lot.
he's,
That's a lot.
yeah, yeah. They're also
That's
incorporating.
meter by meter or even more.
Yeah, yeah, that's what they tote, is meter by meter at that point. Only 5 to 7 inches of rainfall a year, and they're also really focused on maintaining the native flora and fauna up there. So if you ever get the chance to reach out to Ryan, I'm not sure that he does this for everyone, and I think that it's worth the investment. But reach out to him and see if you can do a tour with him up there. This is really one of the coolest sites in Washington, single vineyard sites in Washington. It's owned by Cam Mervold and the Mervold family. This wine is made by Keith Johnson from DVM Wines. It's got a naturalist approach to the wine, native fermentation, low intervention, all whole cluster, all foot trunk. So let's talk a little bit about that stuff, Caleb. What does that mean, and what are your feelings on this type of winemaking style?
Well, it means you just take the fruit from the vineyard on the stem. So you go to the vineyard, you clip it at the stem, you put the fruit in the bin, you take the bin to the winery, and then you simply either in the bin or dump it onto a plafond, and you basically tread with your bare feet. What it does is something different than a whole lot of most wine that's made is it goes back in time. So it's really traditional. It's really good. It's really natural. Everything good about it.
There's a I Love Lucy episode where she stomps the grapes, and it's a lot of fun. So one of the things to keep in mind is that when you're doing a foot trod, it's an old world way of breaking up the clusters, of releasing the juices, and primary fermentation kills anything that a clean foot might have on it. So don't get me wrong, they're not jumping after walking through a cattle farm.
Yeah.
Uh,
You know what? This wine is really, honestly, everyone, y'all got to go try this. You got to buy this, try it. This is an example of what exotic wines taste like. This is
yeah,
about as far from the history of Red Mountain as you can push a wine as I've ever tasted. And we're going to taste another one from Red Mountain, which is a classic from one of the great old growers.
we'll tackle that in another episode, or we'll mix these two together and splice them. But this is an expression of
But
place.
it is Red Mountain because Red Mountain, this is the 22 vintage. The 22 vintage was like 2011. And 2011 was a real problem up and down the West Coast because it was a cold spring and a late flowering and a late flowering and a cold fall. And so we faced underripe grapes. California didn't sell a lot of their 2011s. They didn't even sell them. They made
Yeah.
them, didn't bottle them, didn't sell them. In Washington, we had people who said, "Oh, my favorite vintage ever," which I'm like, really?" But here's what happened in 22. In 22, we had the same late flowering, the same springtime. But in the summer and fall, it was warm and perfect. So we
Yeah.
got to this ripeness in this wine that is special. And what that means is Red Mountain can do, for because it's a hot spot, what most places can't, which is it can ripen late ripening grapes in a cold year beautifully. And to me, that's what makes this taste like Red Mountain. I agree. It's not like the rest of Red Mountain wines you're going to buy, but this is what Red Mountain does in a cold year. It wins.
I agree. I agree. And this is what happens. So I will voice my opinion right now. I am all about native fermentation. I'm about unfined, unfiltered. I really like a very natural and as close as you can get to organic farming, biodynamic farming, less intervention, maximum attention. I am all about in the winemaking world. I think that's and this is all neutral barrel, guys. 93 cases made. This is a highly allocated wine. I would get on the list. I would figure this out. They do some really cool things exclusively for the wine club members. Ryan and Rebecca are salt of the earth people. But I am about this style of winemaking 100%. I think that this is one of the truer expressions of Red Mountain in some ways and what you can do with Red Mountain fruit because there is minimal intervention. We're not talking about a lot of oak. We're not talking about commercial yeast. And it is a risk. It does vary from year to year. It is a little more of a gamble than using a commercial yeast, but the impact of a commercial yeast on flavor, people don't under the world, the non wine world people, even a lot of people in the wine world don't understand the impact that yeast has. At Bookwalter at the time when Caleb used the South African yeast to kind of pull out the more Sauvignon Blanc flavors of Sauvignon Blanc, they, they used the same yeast on Chenin Blanc, and it had a similar aromatic profile, the two of them. And it was interesting. That was kind of my epiphany moment for how big of a flavor driver yeast choices can be.
Yeah, it's a little spooky. The yeast that I was using, it was an experiment, and it was actually a yeast out of California that was genetically modified to encourage um, um, the thiols in the wine and extract them. So, and boy, did it do its job. Now, I'm not into GMO products, but that's what it was. And
Mhm.
look, in the end, the wine, the yeast is gone. It's dead. It's out of the picture. But yeah, it had a capacity to express thiols, and um, and it's just one of many many cards in the deck of what it takes in winemaking to make flavor.
Absolutely. And so for the maybe the non-wine people out there that might be a little home baker or something, you can kind of like relate this to sourdough and sourdough starters when we're talking
Yeah,
about yeast. I also think there's a big thing to say is you can do a native fermentation on one wine and a commercial fermentation on another wine. And if they're in the same building, those yeasts are playing together. There is no doubt that you are losing a little bit of that native fermentation characteristic because they are partying together. It is, for lack of a better word, it is a yeast orgy, and they're all getting down. They're all doing their thing. So, if you want a true to life native fermentation, there couldn't be commercial yeast in the building at one point, or you would have to sterilize it.
you know.
Circling back in AVA, established in 2001. How many AVAs existed before this? Is this the fourth AVA?
It felt like it at the time. It felt
Yeah,
like, yeah, that's all right. There should go. We need Red Mountain. You
yeah.
know,
So you
you can see when you drive by Red Mountain on the Highway 82, you can see it's this triangle of rock. It's this sweeping face. It's clearly a spot in the world. It's defined by the river on the one hand, by a cut in the geologic fault system on the other, by the ridge line and the drop off to the east. It's really clear this is a special spot of rock and wine.
Yeah. And one of the reasons they made excuse me, Red Mountain's so special is that its association to like a true Napa site. It's full
Yeah.
southwest exposure. It's one of the hottest AVAs in Washington. And I think later on we had Welded Slope come out that was a little bit hotter, and I think Royal Slope might have a pocket. Sometimes it's a little bit warmer as well. But Red Mountain is a warm site. But the other really defining factor of Red Mountain. So let me just go over the details of Red Mountain real quick. 4,040 acres total. About 2,300 of those acres are planted to vine. So it's got a large amount of planting. Known for Cab Sauv, Merlot, Syrah. Climate very warm, dry, sunny, and windy, and only about 5 inches of rainfall a year. Sandy loam, gravel, alkaline soils are rich in calcium carbonate. And we are talking about calcium carbonate that builds up into like little balls almost. It's that dense there. Why that matters: small berries, thick skins, concentrated fruits, strong tannin. So these tout themselves as age-worthy wines. And these are two fun facts about Red Mountain before I go on too much of a tangent. One, it is not a mountain; it is a hill. So don't get your hopes up when you're driving
Yeah.
by. If you've never been to Eastern Washington before, you're not going to see this big dramatic mountain that looks like an iron cliff face that's red. So it is a hill. It's a gorgeous hill. And the reason they call it Red Mountain is at the springtime, this wild grass grows. It's a sheep grass. And it is a little devil of a thing. It gets stuck in your socks. It goes,
Beautiful.
but it's this gorgeous crimson red color in the spring, and eventually it dries out and becomes a bit of a fire hazard. But in the spring, it's beautiful, and that's where Red Mountain got its name. It got its name because it's one of the higher hills in the area. I think Goose Mountain is just slightly below that. Candy Mountain's slightly below that in elevation too. Maybe Rattlesnake Hills is a little higher, but so it's considered one of the taller like geological points in the region, and then a very flat land. Once you get out there to Tri Cities, it's just a basin. It goes very, very flat. So those are the two factors that made it Red Mountain. So I think one of the big factors that I think of when Red Mountain is tannin. It's very big tannin, and that is due in large part because of the heat and the wind. Right, berries want to protect themselves. They are
Yeah, the vines are really when a vine is suffering that much heat and wind, it shrinks, it cowers, it doesn't grow very well. And so what happens is, and then plus the heat is going to drive um the skin to be self-defensive and be denser. Yeah, what happens is the grapes are smaller. It's hotter in June when it's flowering, so you've got a smaller grape. A grape that normally might be like, thumbnail size is now pinky nail size. It's just you get a Cabernet that's a smaller orb. What happens when that happens is that the seed doesn't change size, the skin gets thicker, and so what gets lost is juice inside
yep.
the ball. As the ball shrinks from a tennis ball to a ping pong ball, it's
Slow down,
it's
Caleb. This is a kid show.
as the
Sorry, Kate.
ball shrinks, it becomes less juice and more physical matter, the physical matter of the seed and the skin, and that's what raises tannin. So you have more tannin creating organic material in the seed and the skin per gallon of wine juice when the grape shrinks. That's why Red Mountain's a more tannic environment. And the best people, are able to tame this balance. Now, there's a really sophisticated chemistry balance in the color and flavor and tannin that's really, really complicated when you get tiny grapes. I found those to be actually the hardest vintages that I work in were the very, very small grape vintages, because you had the opportunity to make a very, very powerful wine, but you also could ruin that wine by making it so extracted and intense that it's rough and undrinkable.
I think
So
the thing in those kind of vintages with the small berries, it's not can I achieve tannin extraction? It's how do I maintain not overdoing it? I think
it's
yeah, like you said,
absolutely the basic question of the vintage.
and I think that's the question of every vintage. How do you maximize the flavor and the qualities that nature provided that year? Wine is a vintage thing. It changes from vintage to vintage.
It
I
really
think
does.
if you're not talking about wine that changes from vintage to vintage, if you are drinking a wine that tastes the same every year, you're not drinking wine, you're drinking a product. You're drinking something that is
Right.
consistent and
Yeah.
is manipulated. It's Coca-Cola, you know, and
Yeah.
there's Coca-Cola wines out there. There's plenty of people that like Coca-Cola. No harm in it. Anyone that's drinking wine, like, thank you, appreciate you for doing so. Everyone has to start somewhere, and if that's your jam throughout your entire life, there's no harm in that. But I don't like generic wines. I think when we're talking about AVAs, when we're talking about vineyards, we are not talking about generic wines because why would any of that shit matter? You know, why would any of it matter if it was just a generic, boring wine? You know, like
Right.
this is a
Otherwise,
great
just
piece.
farm on and just make whatever you want. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So everything we just talked about with Red Mountain, the only thing that I'm noticing is this is not any of that, right?
No, this I really want to get to this wine because this
Yeah,
wine
let's please.
is so fucking interesting. It's really spicy. It's complex. It's like I said earlier, it's like the outer edge of where you can go with winemaking, and it's really fun because it brings classical ancient technique of foot tread wines. It brings that earthy umami tone. I don't want to get into the flavors of the wine because what I want to say is it's a world apart. It's savory, it's yummy, it's delicious, it's got a lot of flavors to it. It's uncommon, but it's attractive, right? It's really inviting and it's a really, really well-made wine. Y'all got to try this because it defines what fascinating character on the outer edges of Red Mountain is all about.
Ryan Johnson is, you know, what he's doing out here is he's taking techniques that he's studied and he's learned all over the world and he's applying them to a Washington winery. So Washington wineries, we typically train vines on a cordon. Caleb, let's
Right.
explain what a cordon is to the
So
viewers at home.
cordon is where you put vines in a row and you put a string or a wire and then you grow the vine up and across and the wire is holding the vine steady in the wind and then it holds the fruit up and yada yada. These guys instead did what's it called enchiladas. It's a you put a stake in the ground, you put the vine right next to the stake, and you kind of slowly, gently wrap the vine around the stake, and you have the vine go straight up the stake, and you just have stakes. There's no ropes, no tires, no wires, no wires, no tractor.
First,
So you're going to be going out there with a clipper, and you're going to be picking one cluster, putting it into a basket, another, and this is a handmade, very traditional, harvested and grown fruit. So you're carrying a basket of fruit down the vine row and over to the truck and pouring it into a bin.
yeah, no, it you know, it gives its on back to Romans. And let's be honest, when you're talking about the history of European wine, you're talking about Roman expansion for the most
Yeah,
part. I
voilà.
mean, they marched on wine, and so everywhere they went, they planted vines in the ground. And
Must have been a Roman viticulturalist. I mean, that must have been my prior life.
yeah, exactly. I was just a Roman soldier that stood in the back drinking wine, like, oh yeah, wait, you guys run in first. I'll be back here. Let me know when you need a refill. Uh,
That's a spirit.
Yeah, that's the spirit. Yeah, just cowarding in the back. Um, but this is a super cool wine because of those farming techniques, because of the way that he's doing these things. And you know, he says right here, I've got this handy dandy little sheet here where he's
Oh,
talking about intervention, Maestro by Keith Johnson. Fantastic work, Keith Johnson. Keith Johnson has another
indeed.
label, Devium. He's a rock star winemaker here in Washington. 100% whole cluster, unfined and filtered. But this is a field blend, which means that they're picking grapes from all over the vineyard of Ryan's favorite clones. Different clones are going to bring out different characteristics in wines. And I think when you're looking for a really, really complex Syrah, clonal diversity makes a big difference.
From clonal selection to harvest date to yeast selection to foot trot to barrel selection to wine, how long I extract it, how I punch it down, what temperature I'm going to ferment it at. I mean, you got to make all the choices to get here.
Which exactly makes it like this is not making brownies. You know, it's not making your mom's cake. You know, it's not putting in a cup of sugar. He's talking about a million choices that you have to make based on experience. And so, at least when we're talking about not Coca-Cola wines, when we're talking about wines that are
Right,
an expression of place and vintage,
right.
there's no fucking recipe. There's choices. And the only way you make the right choices is with experience, you know? And you learn what works better in some vintages. I've talked to a lot of winemakers over the years. Caleb has this ability to grab onto vintages and know kind of what the exact weather is. It's one of the things that I really focused in on with my time with Caleb when we were working together. And vintage is important, you know. Yep, yep, and it'll go the distance for sure. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that back to our recipe side of things, just to flip up that it's there's no recipe. He used that word. I don't think there's a recipe. I think you can put some quick data facts in, and maybe yeast selection, that kind of stuff. But I think even vintage to vintage, your barrel selection might change. You know, and what you want to
Well,
complement the wine with.
what's interesting is actually, um, no, the barrel selection. What I find about barrel selection is this: is barrel selection is about how you would approach your spice cabinet. Okay, do you want to curry? Do you want salt and pepper? Do you want a Mexican, rosado? Do you want, you're looking at these different tonal aspects, and the difference between barrel and steel and concrete is profound. So when I choose a barrel, I choose that barrel because it has a spice cabinet tone that matches with that vineyard. That's how I see barrels. I see barrels as a spice cabinet that is repeated, and you're always going to get this spice cabinet out of that barrel when
Okay.
they're good, right? And that's so to me, like, Sagemore's good with Legrand and certain barrels. To me, Terrasso and Connerly are perfect. And to me, Marcel Cadet and Connerly Chardonnay are perfect. So those kind of matchings was something I took 10, 15 years to match up. So in a vintage, what I'm looking at, oh my God, it's late and cold. How are we gonna ripen this fruit? Look, I don't know what July is gonna look like. I don't actually know. Maybe July is hot, maybe it's cold. But here's the thing. We gotta sell this. We gotta make money out of this to win big on warmth.
Okay.
That's what a vintage is. And then when you're warm and early, you're like, oh boy, this is gonna be hot. What if it's really hot? Ooh, I gotta protect against really hot. So, for instance, like when we were working together, I put the Bookwalter Readers 2015 Cabernet Sauvignon on the top 100 list of the Wine Spectator magazine for two reasons. Number one, I made really fucking great wine and harvested it early on time.
Yeah.
Number two, I told the story of the harvest and the flowering and the harvest on time. We harvested that on like September 10th.
So the farming choices are getting you to the right spot of ripeness with the grape. And once you achieve that right spot of ripeness, this is the barrel that works for that vineyard.
Yeah, because the barrel's like it's a spice. It tones your fruit. It says, "Oh, this is beautiful, and we like vanilla, or we like smoke, or we like chocolate, or we like savory," right?
So again, these are choices that are made one way or another. So when Caleb's talking about toast and spice and all these kind of things, we're talking about new wood. Let's make that clarification out there. We're talking about a new
Right.
or maybe first use, second use barrel. The first 3 years that a barrel is used, it imparts a little bit of flavor. First year, a lot of flavor. Second year, a little bit
Bingo.
less. Third year, less. Fourth year, neutral. It's no longer imparting. Yeah, it's no longer imparting the
Bingo.
toast and the spices. It's now just used as a vessel to store the wine and the microoxidation that happens in a barrel. So this is a
Bingo.
wine that has all neutral oak on there. And that was an active choice based on wanting not to mask anything that the vineyard's producing and not to get in the way of anything. So also an active choice. And you could choose to do a neutral barrel on the Connerly Chard if you wanted to. Would it be the same Chardonnay? No. There's layers, there's choices to it all, but recipe winemaking is rare in the world where it's a true recipe and this is just what you do. Large production wineries do that. And once again, you get a product, not wine, in my mind. And I will stand on this hill
Agreed.
and die on that hill.
Completely agree. Completely agree. The and so what I'm with you, man. And the thing I mean by recipe is time, temperature, duration, series, sequence. That's what a recipe offers. And yes, if you open up the, New York Times cookbook, you're gonna bet like you're gonna absolutely know how to make this thing. Get your ingredients, it'll work. It'll taste the same every time. You're right. I'm changing that every vintage to match. And
Yeah,
that's, to me, it's an internal recipe. Like I
yeah,
know where I'm going. I'm
yeah,
going over there. I'm going for this great white wine. But whoa, the wave is changing. I've got to surf it differently.
yeah.
So yes, the recipe has to change.
And it's the same. So once again, if we're going off on a tangent here, this might be its own episode one way or another. But I think it's the same. So back to baking, if you're baking at 14,000 feet in, the Northern Rockies, it's a very different process than if you're baking at sea level. You have to take environment into consideration when you do things with nature. It's just nature,
Voilà.
environment, climate, all matters. Elevation matters. And so it's, food and wine are very similar that way. Wine is food. There's a lot of factors that come into play when you're talking about winemaking, and it's
Yeah.
experience that gets you there. You can study, you can do the books, and you can come out there and you can make a cool wine, and I think the next year you make, you might see, oh, I could have done this better. Year after that, oh yeah, this is similar. So there's this book of knowledge that gets built over time. And the really shitty thing about being a winemaker, as in the best case scenario, you get twice a year. You get twice a year to hone in your craft. And that's if you're a traveling winemaker, you're going southern and northern hemisphere. So it's not like going and shooting basketball every day where you can just hone in your shot. You have
That's right.
306.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it's not fun. It's
Oh
not fun
God,
to
it's
try to get.
slow and fucking is so you just have to show up it takes forever.
Yeah. So at 30 years of winemaking, if you're just working in the same vineyard, that's 30 attempts at a wine. 30 attempts. So I mean, when you're talking about 30 years of basketball, you've fired 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 shots at that point. So I think that there's winemakers out there that are doing some pretty unique things very quickly and early on. But understand that this is an industry where you don't get the same kind of experience as you do in other industries. You really have to put it on the
Yeah.
line every year. It's yeah.
Yeah.
So shout out to the winemakers, shout out to the grape. It's the same as a vineyard manager, like Ryan's
Yeah.
doing. He has to make a lot of choices every year, and basically you can screw things up in a single year and really really lose things. You don't get to try again until next year. Uh, so yeah, and shoot your shot.
Indeed.
Yeah, vintage, man, it's something special.
Whew. It is. It's a world in a year. And but y'all need to try super cool wines like this. We want to bring you really interesting wines from each AVA, and we're gonna bring you a super cool Red Mountain wine that's classic. This one's super wild and exotic and delicious. Y'all got to buy it and drink it. It's super cool.
It is
So
worth checking out for sure, 100%. This really is the edge of the wild. It's what this Syrah is called, and this really is the edge of what Washington wine is doing. This is pushing it about as far as you go in terms of out of the norm for Washington wine. And kudos to Ryan for bringing this vineyard and coaxing out what he coaxes out of this wine. What's our alcohol
indeed,
on this? 13.2%. 13.2%, guys. That is rare. Rare
it's
in
rare.
20.
Again, a cold year, late flowering, late harvest, 13.2. It's rare. You're not going to
Yeah.
get a lot of wines out of this estate that are 13.2. You got to try it for that reason as well.
Absolutely. So bright, fresh. Here's the thing. I don't think any winemaker should sacrifice quality for statistics. I
No,
don't think,
never. No,
yeah,
never. Never, never, never.
don't pick on bricks alone and don't pick on pH alone. Pick on instinct. Pick on knowing your vineyard, knowing your site, and going with, all right, this is the flavor that I want. I'm
Yeah.
capturing it now, and I'll deal with the other factors down the road. And we will
Right.
figure out what to do in the cellar to coax the best out of this vineyard, because this is when the fruit is ripe this year. It's not the numbers, it's the flavor. And flavor should be your driver when it comes to wine.
Hallelujah, brother.
All right, guys. Cheers to Red Mountain. Thank you so much, Ryan and Rebecca Johnson. Thank you, Caleb, for joining me today. Cheers
What
to
a pleasure.
Washington Wine. I love this little thing that we did last episode. Cheers, guys.